Hey, welcome to The Explainer. So let me ask you something. What if I told you that your instinct to be reasonable in a negotiation is probably costing you a ton of money? Well, today we're digging into the work of Dr. Karrass to uncover some really surprising truths that could completely change how you get what you want.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a scenario. You're looking to buy a house and it's listed for $500,000. What's your first move? What do you offer? Now, if you're like most of us, your gut is probably telling you to offer something pretty close to that, right? Maybe, I don't know, 475, 480, something that feels fair, a good way to get the ball rolling.
But here's the thing. Dr. Karrass's research shows that exact instinct, that desire to seem reasonable, is actually one of the biggest myths in negotiation. It's a belief that's really holding us back from getting the best possible deal. And today, we're going to bust that myth wide open.
So let's start with the biggest myth of them all. This idea that negotiation is some kind of battle, a zero-sum game where for me to win, you have to lose. This slide just lays it out perfectly. On the one hand, you've got that classic competitive view. There's one fixed pie, and we're just fighting over who gets the bigger slice. But now look at the other side. This is where the real magic happens, the cooperative mindset. It's not about dividing the pie. It's about figuring out how we can work together to bake a much, much bigger one. The goal shifts from just winning to finding a solution where we both come out ahead. And this quote from Dr. Karrass, it just gets right to the heart of it. That bigger pie is almost always there. He argues that buried inside pretty much any deal is a better version, just waiting to be found, one that actually benefits everybody involved. The trick is, you've got to stop fighting over the obvious stuff and start looking for it together. Okay, so let's go back to that house sale. If all you're focused on is the price, it's just a tug-of-war. But what if you find out the seller really needs to stay in the house for another couple of months? Or maybe you'd absolutely love it if they left those amazing custom carpets. See? All of a sudden, you're not just talking about money anymore. You've got new things to play with: timing, furnishings, even financing terms. These are the ingredients for that bigger pie.
And look, this isn't just some nice idea. The research on this is fascinating. Check out this study. They split negotiators into two groups. They told one group that the average settlement was kind of low, around $2.50. They told the other group it was high, $7.50. And guess what happened? People consistently settled right near the target they were given. The takeaway here is so powerful. If you aim higher, you get more. It just completely flips that whole idea of starting reasonably on its head.
All right, let's move on to our second big myth. The idea that if you reach a deadlock, you've failed. We're all taught to see it as a loss, right? The end of the line. But that is definitely not the whole story. Dr. Karrass, he turns this whole concept around. He says deadlock isn't the end of the road at all. It's actually an incredibly powerful and really underused tool. You got to think of it less like a failure and more like a strategic pause button that can totally change the game. So, what does walking away from the table actually do for you? Well, for starters, it sends a huge signal that you're serious. It's pretty much the best way to find out if the other side has any more room to move. But here's the really wild part. It can actually help your opponent. When you show you're willing to walk, you give them the ammunition they need to go back to their own team and say, hey, look, these guys are serious. We need to come up with a better offer. And this is just so important to remember. Walking away almost never means the deal is dead and buried. As this quote shows, it's really just a fluid part of the dance, a tool you can use to reset the board and come back to the table. And often, you'll come back in a much, much stronger position. Okay, on to our third myth, and this one's a biggie: power. We usually think power comes from having the biggest job title or the most money in the bank. But the real sources of power in a negotiation, well, they're often a lot more subtle and surprising. One of the most potent and kind of hidden forces is what Dr. Karrass calls the power of legitimacy. This is the power of anything that just looks official: a printed form, a policy manual, a price list on the wall. These things have this almost hypnotic effect on us, convincing us that the terms are just set in stone and there's no point in even trying to change them. And you see this everywhere. Think about it. When has someone said to you, sorry, that's just our company policy, or pointed to some official-looking price list? They're using the power of legitimacy. Even a simple sign that says, keep off the grass. Most of us, we just obey it without ever questioning who put it there or if it even matters. But okay, here's a really mind-bending idea about power for you. Sometimes, the absolute strongest position you can be in is having less authority, not more.
Just look at these two scenarios.
The person with full authority, they're feeling the pressure, right? They have to make a decision right here, right now. But the person who can say, you know what, I need to run this by my boss, or I've got to check with the team, they have all the power. They get to slow things down, they get time to think, and they can use their own organization as a convenient bad guy. It's a huge, huge advantage.
And that brings us to our final and maybe the most important principle of all. This is the one that gets to the real, human core of what a negotiation is truly about. It's called negotiating the whole iceberg.
See, we spend so much of our time and energy focused on what people are actually saying out loud. But the real negotiation, the one that truly determines the outcome, is almost always happening completely below the surface. The tip of the iceberg, that's everything we can see and talk about openly. We're talking about price, product specifications, terms and conditions, all that logical, tangible stuff.
But underneath the water, that is where the real action is. This is the massive, hidden part of the iceberg. And it's all about those powerful, unspoken human needs. The person sitting across from you, they want to avoid risk. They want to look good in front of their boss. They want peace of mind. They want to be treated with respect. These are the real levers that actually make a deal happen.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? You're never going to see an invoice with a line item for a pound of friendship or a bucket of integrity. But at the end of the day, that is what people are actually buying. When you start negotiating to meet these hidden needs, you're not just closing a deal anymore. You're creating a true both-win solution.
So let's put this all together. Think of this as your new negotiation playbook. Step 1. Aim higher. Start with targets that feel a little more ambitious than just reasonable. Step 2. Always be looking for that both win, that bigger pie. Step 3. Use your power wisely. Understand and leverage those subtle sources of power, like legitimacy and limited authority. And finally, and most importantly, negotiate the whole iceberg. Always be listening for and addressing those unspoken human needs.
You know, when you start using this playbook, you're not just going to be a better negotiator, you're going to change the entire game. It stops being a battle to be won and becomes this collaborative puzzle that you solve together. So I'll leave you with this final thought. We spend so much time worrying about our own limits, but have you ever really stopped to search for the limits of the other side's power? Because they are always there. And when you find them, you'll discover you have a lot more power than you ever imagined.